Business athletes, what is going on? Coming back at you with another practical, tactical episode. This one is the No Excuses Travel Blueprint, Health, Fitness, and Routine on the Road. Essentially, guys, the business athlete travel protocol, how to stay fit, lean, and energized anywhere at any time. And I'll preface this conversation by saying that I've got a lot of experience in this arena because the famous musician Chris Daughtry, who I'm very good friends with now and have mentored him for a number of years, he's always on tour. He's always on the road. In fact, he just came back from a tour through Europe. And a lot of the principles that I have fleshed out and developed to keep him in absolute peak state. I mean, if you see this guy now in his mid-40s, phenomenal. And all because of these principles and protocols that I'm going to be sharing. I'm going to pull back the curtain and I'll share with you the tactics. Now, I would even tell you that this is going to be useful for you even if you're not someone that travels a ton. Because part of this conversation is around the idea of how do you stay on top of your good habits, your good health habits when you're busy. When you're busy, you've got a lot on your plate, you're spinning a lot of plates, because that's typically where people fall apart. I cannot tell you the amount of people I've had conversations with that will say things like, hey man, they'll come out and reach out to me about coaching, and then they'll go, oh, well, look, man, I definitely want to join and get in on this, but let me get through this travel and this busy schedule over this month first, and then we can start. And I think to myself, that's such an idiotic way to think about it. Because think about this. It basically presupposes that your ability to get in shape and stay in shape is contingent on you being at home in a nice little controlled environment. And at any time you're busy, any time you have traveling for anything, you don't even cultivate the skill sets to know what to do when you're not at home. So are you planning on never leaving the house again in your life? Or are you planning on just relapsing and imploding on yourself every time you travel? Because that's essentially what people say. The true high performers, the true business athletes, they are definitely the ones that just ready, fire, aim. They're like, let's just get into it, man. Let's just start failing forward. Let's figure it out. Let's take imperfect action. Done is better than perfect. So I just wanted to say that first and foremost, that there's never going to be the perfect time for any of this stuff. You just make it so. And also, this comes off the back of, at the time of the recording of this episode, I was away last week in Louisiana. So we drove down, because we have young children, and so we had to break the drive up into two bits. So we drove down to Louisiana because, unfortunately, my wife, Lauren, her beautiful grandmother passed away on Thursday. And she's this beautiful soul. We all had a very close connection with her. And obviously, it's a challenging thing in this life. And so I was traveling. I was driving. I had my family with me, all the stuff. And I know that if you don't stay on top of your routines while you travel, especially when you're going through pressure, stress, and emotional stuff, you will get sick. You'll get sick, you'll burn out, you'll start to just deviate, you'll feel like the wheels are falling off. And so how many times has that happened to you, where you're either traveling and you're doing all the wrong things, you're eating like crap, you're not moving, you're skipping workouts, your sleep's all messed up, your digestion feels terrible, you start to feel foggy, you feel anxious, and when you get back home, you don't even know what day of the week it is. You're like, man, what am I doing again? That's what most people do. So I want to share with you a lot of the tools and tactics that I deploy so I can go and take these long drives and still use my time as effectively as possible and have systems in place where I stay locked in. Because now I'm back. We got back yesterday afternoon, and I had a process of what I do when I get back home. That's all locked away. It's all squared away now. So Monday, back at it, recording a podcast. So I say this because I want you to create your version of that. Now, I'm going to break this conversation down into some pillars, some core concepts, some tenets. So pillar number 1 is this concept of identity first. You've got to, and I start with this because most people, your rate limiting factor is your identities / perspective / attitude. If you have a crappy attitude and you're a mopey, whiny victim, you are going to continue to get terrible results. That's just me being absolutely honest. Some people that I interact with, their results are because of their attitude. So the first thing that I want to tell you is don't say things like, I'm going to try and stay on track. You've got to think about, you're not trying to stay on track. You're just a business athlete who travels. Period. I'm just a business athlete who's traveling. I'm not trying to stay on track. I'm a business athlete who's traveling, who's got systems, processes, and that I can deploy that will help me lay a good foundation. I ain't worried about trying to stay on track. So you got to have that tenacious attitude first. And recognize that it's not going to be perfect. I mean, my step count was not anywhere near where it normally is. Obviously, I still probably got more steps than the average person, even though I was driving for 6 hours a day and spending a lot of time packing up our bags and dealing with the family and all the things. So it's not perfect. You know, you're never going to get it perfect. But there are some key levers, some core concepts. And the first thing is definitely you've got to have this attitude of, I'm a business athlete who travels. There's never going to be the perfect window for this. I'm going to start this now. I'm going to stop telling myself that when I'm through this busy season of life, then I'll start the thing. When I hear someone say that, and then I look at their physique, I'm like, that's why you are fat. That's why you're out of shape. And then I even look at their family, and I look at their children, and their children are overweight too. And I'm like, can you not see the ripple effect that your words and your habits and behaviors have? It's a flow-on effect that's literally directly affecting your children too. So again, as a positive notion, that's why we want to lean into this. It's why we want to work at this stuff. Now, the second part of this is you got to define your non-negotiables. So what I would tell you is that most people, they don't even really have non-negotiables. They don't have a set of core things that they're like, okay, every day I need to make sure that I'm locking in X, Y, and Z. They just don't do that. Now, I will tell you the key things that I think about every day when it comes to my non-negotiables is movement. Now, movement is a hybrid concept of walking and or short metabolic body weight or banded workouts. And sometimes it's just 10 minutes. But movement is the first thing. Because if you don't move, if you just sit on the airplane, or you just sit on the tour bus, or you just sit in the car all day, and then you get to the location, and then you sit some more, your energy is going to be terrible, and your digestion is going to suck. And that really then starts to throw you off a lot. So that's the first thing, is movement. The second thing is hydration. Most people, when they're traveling, they tend to run dehydrated because they obviously don't want to be power chugging a bunch of fluids and then having to stop every 30 minutes at truck stops. So you can run a risk of inadvertently dehydrating yourself. That then makes you feel like you get more cravings. You'll get a lot more cravings. Feel a lot more hungry, but also migraines and headaches. And you'll just feel constipated, and your digestion will feel backed up because you're dehydrated. So I've got some tools around hydration that I'm going to cover with you as well. Another concept is your sleep effort and your sleep hygiene. Now, one of the things that I really made an emphasis on with my family when we were traveling was I said to Lauren, I'm like, look, we're going to be with your family. Obviously, we're going through a very emotional time, but let's have the bookends of our day where we have a good morning routine and we have a good evening routine. And then during the day, we can interact with them and be a bit more flexible around what needs to happen. And so every day, at the normal time we have dinner and the normal time that we wind down to go to sleep, we did the same things. We did the same things. And I will tell you that not only is it act like an anchoring mechanism for yourself, but it definitely helps with the kids. If your routines are all chaotic and sporadic, it will make things so much harder if you have children too, because all of a sudden now they're out of their familiar territory, and that will throw them off too. So sleep hygiene, sleep effort is another part of this. The other part of it, I would say, is your protein and eat the rainbow as best as you can. Obviously, protein is a good foundation layer, so we're going to be talking about that. But usually I say about 1 gram per pound of target body weight. And again, it might be in the form of some protein powders, some protein snacks. Sometimes you've got to get those things in as an addition to just hit your target. But that comes down to preparedness and due diligence ahead of time to know what you even need. So again, we'll be talking about some of that stuff in terms of like food preparation, because there are some very good tactics around food preparation that I think will be very useful for you. Now, what I would say beyond that is some form of accountability mechanism. Now, for me personally, I've got a couple of systems. The first one is in my Anomaly Project course in my Superhuman Mastermind group. That's my main mastermind group. I drop into our Telegram channel and I do what's called my morning mindset messages every single day. Every day. And I'd usually do it at the same time. So it's every day at about 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, the reason why I do this is because I've realized that for most people, having a good plan is one part of the equation. What's missing is tribe. What's missing is mindset. What's missing is the emotional intelligence to navigate your challenges well. And so that's why some people just aren't in shape. You know, you would imagine that if all it took was a good plan, then we would just go to ChatGPT or Claude or Grok, plug in our stats, and say, give me a good plan, and it's going to give you a good plan. Well, how's that going for you? Have you been AIing and ChatGPTing the heck out of your diet and training? How's that going for you? Are you actually getting the results you want? Because you have to understand that that's one part of a more widespread equation. And the other part of the equation is you've got to have accountability mechanisms. And so for me, I drop in and I do these morning mindset messages. And what it does is it forces me to think proactively. It forces me to think productively. What we focus on expands. So if you focus on being a negative and a bunch of just whiny, victim-hooded stuff, you're going to experience more of that. So I'm in the morning thinking to myself, what's a lesson I can share today based on what I've been going through? Where's the wisdom? Where's the value? Let me get into that place and let me articulate. And so not only do I start my day with that, so I would tell you that that's why, get into one of my mastermind groups, and then you can do your own accountability posts in the group where you're sharing things like that. You're sharing a bit of your wisdom. You're sharing a bit of a lesson that you have. There's many people that are my students that are in these groups that do that, and it really does help them. So you got to remember that the equation is bigger than what you think. It's not just about tactics. But the other part of it is that's why I use Facebook and Instagram stories. I tell people I use Facebook and Instagram stories like a digital accountability log. I'll post my talking head videos. I'll post my meals. I'll post my training. I post bits of my day because it makes me mindful. It forces me. It's a forcing function. It's a forcing function. And so that's also why I get my students to post their daily accountability posts in the group where they drop their meal pictures and their step count and their sleep score and all that type of stuff, because it's a forcing function of higher level accountability. And so that's generally what I would tell you. That's the thing that's missing for most people. And that's why your results suck. For many people, their results suck because they don't have that system in place. So again, I'm not here to tell you that you have to come to me to get mentoring, but what I would say is that you can have a great plan, but if it's not working, it's because that's missing. And I would absolutely tell you, as we come into spring at the time of this recording, reach out and get into my Anomaly Project 6-week course, or get into my Business Athlete Council, or get some one-on-one. You got to recognize that the pros get professional help, amateurs bootleg and guess, like I always say. Now, I would tell you that find your version of that too. So if you're combining movement, banded workouts, light exposure with walking, however possible, with protein target and eat the rainbow as much as you can, with hydration, with sleep hygiene, and forcing function accountability mechanisms, that is a really, really good set of non-negotiables that anchor you to a better process. Because if you don't have anything that you have as a set of non-negotiables, it will be so flimsy and brittle when it comes to keeping your habits intact. Very often what happens is people get back home and they don't even remember what the heck they were doing. They're like, oh, what was I doing again? Like, I can't even remember what my diet looked like, because they've lost complete momentum. Most people, and more than likely including yourself, is they think it's so freaking hard to get in great shape. It's only hard because that you stop-start so much. The stop-start is what kills people. Whereas if you keep some degree of momentum, some degree of quote-unquote keeping the habit intact, it makes it so much easier long-term. It reminds me of that quote, eat an apple a day, not 7 on Sunday. You're not going to have good oral hygiene if you don't brush your teeth every day, and then on the 30th day you brush your teeth for an hour. Look, I'm going to figure out how much time I normally brush my teeth every day, and I'm going to multiply that by 30. How does that work for you? That's what most people do with their freaking diet and their health. It's why it feels so impossible. So, pillar number 3 is movement and neat on the road. This can be challenging. So there's a couple of things here. When we fly to New Zealand, because obviously I'm from New Zealand originally, and we make trips back periodically. Sometimes we'll spend 3 to 6 months living in New Zealand, and then we'll come back to the Smoky Mountains. So we kind of go back and forth. What I find, at least while I'm on these long-haul flights, is I will do my Mike Tyson push-ups. People call them the superhuman push-ups now because I do them so much. But if you go to YouTube and search Mike Tyson push-up, you'll see what I'm talking about. I'll literally get into the aisle where they have the little kitchen space, like at an hour where I know most people are sleeping, and I'll bust out some superhuman push-ups just to move the body. And then the other thing that I do is I'll often just walk up and down the aisles a little bit during times where there's low traffic volume. So usually not right around meal times, because if you just sit and you're super static for long periods of time, you will feel like trash. And I will definitely tell you that. So if you're traveling domestically or even internationally and you're flying, walk when you're at the airport. So get to your terminal early and literally just find a little spot that's near your terminal and just walk around. Just walk around, clock up some steps, get on some calls, send some audio messages, listen to a podcast, repurpose that time. Like I always talk about, you make that time useful. So airport walking is a good one. I would say walking up and down aisles on an airplane, obviously if it's a longer international flight. If it's a domestic flight, it's probably not really worth it. But definitely the airport walking, I think, is a good one. I would say that wherever you are staying, as much as you can, unless you have a ton of bags, walk the stairs rather than the elevator. So for me, for example, I didn't do that when we were traveling over the last few days because we have a bunch of bags. I've got my kids with me, so it was just way too hard to try and carry everyone's stuff up and down. But normally if I'm by myself, I will take the stairs. And I would definitely tell you, you'd be surprised at how much those little changes make a really big difference to your energy, your digestion, and the maintenance of the trajectory that you're on with your health. So think about any windows of time where you can get steps in. When we're driving, I'll usually stop about 3 times over a 6-hour window. So about every 2 hours I'll stop. Part of it is because I still drink a good amount of fluids and I need to go use the bathroom. Rather than me going, oh, well, I'm just going to like not drink anything and dehydrate the heck out of myself and drive all the way through, I would rather strategically stop at rest stops to not only walk and get a little bit of sunlight, but to maintain a higher ratio of hydration. And then obviously remember, if you have young children too, it makes a lot more sense to be able to take shorter little stops. So I would encourage you to maintain your hydration, which means that then you'd have to stop a little bit more at these truck stops. And then we'll usually stop at like Pilot's truck stop or Love's or like a rest area. I like the rest areas generally because they'll usually have public restrooms and it's not really dirty. Like a lot of big gas stations are quite dirty. And so we'll usually stop at those because they can be quite scenic as well. And so we'll park further down, we'll park further away, and we'll walk the distance to the restrooms. And it's not usually that far. It's just like probably an extra 100 feet or something. But like I said, all those little pieces, they all add up. They all add up. So I definitely think that rest stops, walking, making sure that in the morning when I would get up, usually when we travel, we'll usually get a room where we have the main bedroom and then we have like a lounge space as well. I'm going to be talking about some of the criteria that I look for when I'm traveling with a house or an Airbnb, but especially hotels. But I'll get up in the morning early, the family will be in the bedroom, and I'll be walking around the lounge. I'll just walk back and forth while I'm sending voice messages and getting some stuff done on my phone. And I'm telling you now, that little early morning walk to start your day, and obviously you can go down to the treadmill in the hotel gym if you want. I usually just don't do that because if I'm walking really early in the morning, I just want to be able to get up and just do it. I don't want to have to, quote unquote, get ready to go down to a public little hotel gym. I would rather just be able to do it like wearing my shorts with no shirt on. You know what I mean? So I do it. I remove the barriers of entry. I want to make it as easy as possible. So one morning on the way back, with this one hotel we stayed at, we couldn't get the normal setup that we want to. And so I literally went into the bathroom early in the morning because my family might wake up at 6 a.m. I'm up at 3. And I did stand up and kind of walk around a little bit. Now, that might sound crazy to some people, but I'm telling you, if you're super sedentary first thing in the morning, you will feel like your energy is low and your digestion won't feel good. And so that's the first thing, is you want to front load your morning with some steps and movement first. The other thing is that when you get to your destination, your goal is to take some type of walk within the first 15 to 30 minutes of you getting to your location. And so one of the things that we did when we were heading down was Lauren found a sushi spot that she wanted to get some sushi from. And it happened to be about 5 to 10 minutes walk from the hotel. And so when we got all our bags in, we just took a little walk out to get that done and then come back. And so you're clocking up more steps. And the truth is like the same thing for even if you don't go to get food or something, just go down to the hotel gym and walk on the treadmill for 15 to 30 minutes and just catch up with some work stuff on your phone. Like, you repurpose that time, like I've said. But I promise you, if you front load and back load some steps into your day every day, even on the days where you're traveling for a long period, you will feel a lot better. It will help manage your hunger and craving control. It will help with your digestion, and your energy will be a lot more balanced and stable. Because typically what you'll find is that if your energy is crashing, that's when you start to want to snack and eat little snacky bits of junk food and crap. And even if it's not junk food, you're just snacking more. So it's just more calories your body doesn't even really need. And so I definitely think the movement and the walking can really help with that. Now, obviously in an ideal setting, you getting outside in the light and moving outside, like when we walk to get the sushi, is a better option than just staying indoors and walking on the treadmill. But at the end of the day, either one of those is useful. Either one of those is the good way to do it. So think about front loading and back loading your day with steps, even if it's in the hotel room. Walk around the hotel room if you need to. Repurpose that time on your phone, listen to a podcast, send a voice message, do what you got to do, right? If you're flying, airport, terminal walks, up and down the aisles on the international flights, there's just so many little things that you can do. And if you're feeling like your energy's really off, jump down and bust out 50 to 100 superhuman push-ups. That's what I did. So every morning, I do that every morning to start my day, to kind of wake up my nervous system. And it just helps you become a little bit more cognizant and alert without feeling like you're needing 1,000 milligrams of caffeine just to function, like a lot of people. That's typically not the solution long term. So you got to think to yourself about movement and NEAT on the road. And I would say, obviously, if you are staying in a location and it's not a travel day, but you're staying somewhere else, absolutely get outside and take walks through the day. I mean, that to me is a no-brainer. I would tell you that you will still be able to hit 10,000 plus steps a day on the days where you're not traveling, just by getting outside a couple of times in the day and walking in the sun, or just walking in the natural light, even if it's cloudy. So you definitely want to make sure that your step count's as high as it can be. If you're getting up in the morning and you're sitting around, and then you're sitting while you're flying or driving, and you're getting the location and you're sitting some more, that's what you don't want to do. That's what most people do, and that's why their results suck. So you've got to play that front-loading and back-loading game. Even when you're tired. There's been times when we were coming back where it was like exhausting, tiring. You know, our son Xander, he's 9 months old. He's in the back of the truck screaming and crying because he doesn't understand why he's strapped in. And so it's mentally exhausting for us all. You know, we'd hit these gridlock traffic. It's just like dealing with all of that stuff. You get to the hotel, you don't really feel like doing anything. But I recognize that if I just based all my decisions of how I felt in the moment, you'd look like everyone else. So you need to operate differently by future pacing. How do I want to feel? How do I want to feel once I go down and walk for 15 minutes when I didn't feel like doing it? That's what you want to focus on, the future pacing. Now, the next part outside of movement, walking, steps, NEAT, aka non-exercise activity thermogenesis, is your training anywhere. So for pillar number 4, training anywhere. Now, what I would tell you is that a couple of things. One, regardless of if you're staying in a fancy hotel and the gym is really nice, or you're staying in a hotel where there's like a gym just down the road, whatever that looks like for you, still take a set of powerlifting loop tension bands with you. Still take a set of powerlifting loop tension bands. I trained, when we traveled around in our RV for a couple of years just exploring, I did a lot of banded workouts. And I will tell you that a good banded workout can actually be very, very effective. Very effective. Now, the reason why I say take the bands regardless is, one, they're cheap. Two, they don't take up a ton of space. So they're quite portable. But the other component is that it removes any variables that might hit you at the last minute. So let's say you get to the hotel, but the gym is like closed for like maintenance or upgrade. What do you do then? Right? So like do not allow any external variable to stop you from executing on that non-negotiable. So regardless of if I'm going to be staying in a hotel or wherever, I always make sure I've got my set of powerlifting loop tension bands with me. Now, this matters probably even more if you're traveling and you're staying in an Airbnb. Because obviously if you're staying in an Airbnb, yeah, you can like try to find the nearest gym, and maybe you're in a place where the nearest gym is very close by. Hey, knock yourself out. Go use that gym if it's like just down the road. I mean, I absolutely think that's a great idea. But I would still take your set of powerlifting loop tension bands with you. Now, I have a set of powerlifting loop tension bands. I usually have 2 sets because I like to do one band on each arm, like a sort of a bilateral movement. You don't necessarily need to do 2 like me, but I get a set of the metal powerlifting loop tension band metal handles, because these little handles hook onto the bands, and it just makes the workout a lot more effective. So get yourself a set of those. Now, what I would tell you is try to look for hotels that have some type of gym facility. And if you can get online and you can get a visual of what the gym looks like, that's useful because it gives you some kind of indication of what you're dealing with. I always tell people the things that I look for while I'm traveling is gym status at the hotel and a hotel that has some type of kitchen setup. Now, I realize that that's not always viable, but the reason why I want the kitchen setup is because, one, the refrigerator is usually larger, which I like. It will often have a freezer as well, which I like. And it just makes it easier to keep your habits really locked in because you have more space to prepare your healthy foods. So, yeah, sure, I'm going to be talking about some of the tactics you can use if you don't have access to that stuff. I've got solutions for all of these things. But I definitely think that checking out the hotel gym, making sure that ideally it's a hotel that has some type of kitchen set up in it. Obviously, if it's an Airbnb, that's going to solve the problem. But the main thing is hotel gyms, powerlifting loop tension bands. One of the things that we would do with Chris Daughtry, the musician, was he did powerlifting loop tension bands, and he used what's called a Max Pro Plus. So the Max Pro Plus is this little portable cable station that you stand on, and you basically turn these dials, and it increases the tension on the cables. I found it, and I tested it, and I got him on that, and he will use that. It's not amazing. It does have its downfalls, but all in all, it's a decent piece of equipment because what it does is it allows you to get, say, like a deadlift in. You can do a cable tension deadlift. And remember, like I've said in other episodes, the main thing you want to focus on when it comes to optimizing training is hitting the big muscle groups well. So if you can train larger muscle groups, like full body stuff, that's a better metabolic and anabolic ROI than you just hitting biceps, for example. So if you're doing a Max Pro deadlift or even a banded deadlift, that's a lot of muscles you're stimulating at once. That's that business athlete ethos around creating maximal ROI with the way that you train. Now, I would say you can do bodyweight workouts too. What I typically do when I'm training in any environment is I'll do either tension band, and sometimes I'll take my tension bands down to the hotel gym because very often the hotel gym might have a set of dumbbells that maxes out at, say, 40 pounds. So then what I'll do is I'll take the dumbbells and I'll also add a tension band for even more resistance. So if I'm doing a chest press, I'll wrap the band across my back and I'll hook it over each thumb. So there's already some tension on it. And then I'll chest press the 40-pound dumbbells with the tension band on top of it. So now you can create you probably create 90 to 120 pounds of tension. So combining tension bands with dumbbells is a great way to create more resistance and progressive overload curve if you're only dealing with, say, 30 or 40-pound dumbbells, which I know for some of you guys that might be sufficient, but for some people it's not. So this is one way to mitigate that. What I also think about is, like I've said, I'm focusing on full body workouts and I'm focusing on training big muscle groups. You want to stimulate as much musculature as you can in one session. Like I wouldn't be thinking about just doing bicep curls and just doing an arm workout, for example. I would do a ladder workout. So generally speaking, a ladder workout is going to be exercises A, B, C, D, E, F, or something like that. Maybe 4 to 6 exercises back to back. And you basically cycle through those. You set a timer. You have that sequence of exercises, and let's say you do anywhere between 10 and 20 repetitions, and you just cycle through that for 10 to 20 minutes. Because generally speaking, what I find is that, especially if you have young children and you have a family, like in my position, it's pretty hard to travel and then have like a nice 1 hour long workout without sort of feeling like you're not sort of helping with the cohesion of the family. So what I would rather do is duck out real quick for 10 to 20 minutes, get a good ladder workout in with tension bands coupled with dumbbells, full body metabolic, and then be done. And I'm telling you guys, like, that is such a useful combination of processes. And then if you stack that morning and finishing of the day movement step count, like I said, that's a really good way to stay on top of things. Chris Daughtry, the musician, he would sometimes be on his tour bus. Depending on where he was, sometimes he will be flying and he'll be in hotels. Obviously, some of these hotels will have nice gyms. Other times, if he's going from town to town, he might be on a tour bus. Now, again, what he does in that instance is he's got the powerlifting loop tension bands and he's got the Max Pro cable station. So you obviously can add body weight stuff to that too. Now, I say this because a lot of people, they don't even train while they travel. And that's, again, I know this might sound rude, but that's why you're fat. That's why you're not in shape. Because your good processes, you don't have non-negotiables while you're on the road that you should and must have. You've got to get out of your own way and execute. Now, what I would tell you is in terms of the timing, it really just depends on your schedule. Like if you have a long day ahead of you, sometimes starting your day with a workout can be a good way to start the day and kind of get that nervous system upregulated. Other times you might find that you have to get going too early and you have a bit of time in the afternoon or evening and you'd rather kind of finish off in the afternoon. Now, I would tell you though, don't train too late. Like I wouldn't be doing a workout at 5 p.m., for example. You know, when you create like a little bit of an adrenaline response from training, that adrenaline response will then affect your sleep. Your sleep is fundamental to your immune system and your psychology. That really is the key leading indicator. So what I would do is at the latest, I'd probably do a quick ladder workout at say 4 p.m. I'd cut off at 4 p.m. after if I had to, and I would just walk. Or I would front load the day instead. So just think about the way your schedule's kind of mapped out and think about what's going to impede sleep more and lean into what doesn't do that, which doesn't impede things more. And like I said, focus on big muscle groups or full body workouts, ladder sequences. That is going to be, in my opinion, a really good way of locking your processes in long term and not missing. Like I was saying, you know, that's the good example of eating an apple today, not 7 on Sunday. You know, most people, if they skip a week's worth of workouts and then they just want to come in and go berserk, that's not really that useful. So you want to make sure that training and movement is a part of that non-negotiable too. Now, another part of it is your protein anchor coupled with the rainbow concept. Now, I realize for some people that rainbow concept of where's my green, where's my red, where's my orange vegetable might be a little bit challenging depending on where you are and what you're doing. What I do, all I can share with you is like what I do right now, but I can also give you some ideas about like, you know, what does Chris Daughtry do or what are other modalities you can play with. But when we were traveling, I got a cooler bin and I loaded up the cooler bin with our macro bowl foods. I put some ice packs in there. I loaded up with some my macro bowl foods and the snacks that we use. And what I'll do is I'll even add like a knife. Generally, like I'll add a little cutting board if I have to. And so when we get to these locations, if I need to just quickly dice up some stuff, I can either do it raw or I can throw it in the microwave. So you've got to be thinking a little bit ahead of time. So I usually take some microgreens, I'll take some red peppers, and I'll take some carrots or something like that. And then depending on what we're doing, I might get some frozen broccoli because my daughter Zia loves broccoli. So I'll throw those types of things in the microwave as well. But what I would tell you is sometimes you might find that you have a good food option near you. And I'm going to be talking about the smarter food options in terms of travel, like using AI and using apps like Happy Cow in a second to really help you like pre-select good dietary choices. But the first thing is the protein anchor. So what I would say is that one of the fundamental targets that you want to be thinking about is your total protein intake each day. Because what often happens is people will just start grazing and eating mindless snack foods and stuff. And so just the grazing, the macros and the calories are all like skew-whiff. It's all out of order. And so what I would say is think about your protein target is about 1 gram per pound of target body weight. So if you're 200 pounds but you want to be 180, go for about 180 grams of protein. Now, then what I would be doing is I'd be thinking to myself, how much protein do I need to have in the form of a whole food protein with my dinner meal? How much protein can I get in, say, a couple of protein shakes or a protein bar or something? So you do need to be a little bit mindful of what you're doing, but that just comes down to some degree of preparation. But the protein anchor is a good base because protein helps with satiety, meaning it does help curb and blunt hunger responses. And the other thing is that when you're traveling, even if you're not necessarily training really hard, the protein acts like a muscle preservation substrate. So, and I would say the people that do a poorer job with this are usually the ladies. I find women tend to sort of undershoot their protein requirements, even on a good day, a lot of the time. And that does have an effect. So you really need to be thinking to yourself, like high protein snacks, protein bars, protein smoothies. Have you got sort of a predetermined amount of protein that's in a Ziploc bag or in a vacuum sealed pack? I mean, for example, I do a good amount of marinated like teriyaki tofu, being plant-based. And what I'll do is I know that there's X amount of protein in one of those little vacuum sealed packs. And so maybe I get 2 of those packs and I cut them up and cut them open. And that's going to give me, X amount of protein per day. And then I stack on a couple of, protein shakes or something like that to hit my total. So and it doesn't have to be perfect. Obviously if it's not quite right, don't fret it. But what I would tell you is just be cognizant of that in some capacity. But the other part, like I mentioned, was that rainbow concept. Now, I think that's important because remember, when you are traveling, your immune system's getting stressed. In general, for a lot of people, travel is stressful. That's a stress response in and of itself. And so the colored foods act like antioxidants. They act like anti-inflammatories. And so that's all the good stuff that you want to make sure that you're feeling decent. Because if you start eating a very myopic, bland diet, and you're stressed, and you're really pushing yourself and traveling a lot, you're more than likely to get sick. Colds, flus, you name it. So I see people do that all the time. So this kind of helps mitigate some of that stuff. But what I would say in terms of protein angle would be like a grilled lean protein, eggs, protein shakes, plant-based or dairy-based Greek yogurts, those types of things. And even like protein bars that you like the taste of too. Now, again, it's one of those things where don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Some people will be like, protein bars are junk. It's like candy bars for fitness people. And I'm like, I get it. I understand what you're saying. But don't let perfect be the enemy of good, where I would rather you get that system locked in to the best of your ability and then fight another day rather than feeling like, I'm going to skip it completely, undershoot my target by a mile because I want to just be like a food purist. So again, everyone's context is different. Some people, if they need to lose a ton of weight and they want to be much healthier, sometimes the fasting can be a useful tool. So if that's the case for you, lean into that. Now, when it comes to the smart travel nutrition, a couple of things that I would say is, remember, it's not going to be perfect, but done is better than perfect. Now, you want to be thinking, you want to do a little bit of due diligence here. And I'm going to be talking about a couple of things where I'll use AI and food apps in a second. But you do want to kind of know what you're going into. So you want to either know what the hotel menu might look like. If you plan to make your own food, you want to have some type of breakdown around the food options in your little cooler. You take a larger cooler like I do, or you take a sort of a mini one. And even then, sometimes you may not have the ability to do that. And that's where you really need to rely on whatever you can find access to in your areas. And again, I'm going to talk about that in a second. But I would say the main thing to remember is that grocery stores over fast food. Grocery stores over fast food, simple meals, whole foods. So foods with one ingredient, macro bowl stuff, simple. It doesn't have to be super uber extravagant. Like, if you're making a home meal and you've got all your fermented foods and you've got all your different colors and you've got your adaptogen mushrooms and you've got all the different things. There's nothing wrong with doing that when you're at home and you're in that controlled environment. When I'm traveling, sometimes it's just protein, rainbow. That's it. Just with some condiment on top. That's it. So simple meals is a good thing because it keeps the system intact. And grocery stores over fast food, that's so important to remember that. Because most people, they'll just look for the nearest freaking Taco Bell. And there might be the odd occasion where you have to do something like that. But you want to absolutely minimize that as much as possible. So it kind of ties into pillar number 7 around using AI and food apps. So one of the apps that I've used for a number of years before AI really came to prominence was an app called Happy Cow. So Happy Cow is actually a vegan plant-based app that helps you find those healthier vegan plant-based options in your area. The good thing about Happy Cow, though, is that it gives you like all the healthy food options in general. So even if you are not strictly plant-based like myself, it's going to give you the healthier food options in general. And what I will also say is that most of the time, food places that have good, healthy plant-based options are usually more health-oriented in general. So if you're looking for plant-based options, it's usually because you're looking for healthy options. So whenever I travel, before I even leave, I will plug into the app my address for my hotel or wherever I'm going to be. And what it does is it gives you a blast radius of anywhere between 1 and 10 miles from your location. This is such a powerful strategy because what it does is it then gives you an idea of, okay, do you even need to take food with you at all? Maybe you don't. If I was going somewhere and we were in the middle of LA and there was like a Sweet Green, so Sweet Green is like a macro bowl spot that's awesome. I probably wouldn't even take stuff to prepare. I would just get some Sweet Green. But generally speaking, you're not always going to have access to those things. So it gives you an idea of like what lever do you need to pull. If you're traveling and you can't find a ton of great options on Uber Eats, that's where you might want to take like the grocery store option and hit your protein target, generate the macro bowl concept, use the rainbow concept as much as you can. But if you are in a location that has got more options and you've got your Sweet Green or another poke bowl style location, that's definitely a good way to strategize. Now, using the app Happy Cow will determine that course of action. What I do is I plug in my address, I look at the blast radius of, say, 1 to 10 miles. I try to find something that's within walking distance, and I'll walk. Now, if I'm busy or for whatever reason I don't have the bandwidth, I'll do the Uber Eats option and get it delivered to the hotel. But usually, if I can walk to then stack some steps in on the equation, I will do that. Now, that helps you identify the best food options. A new strategy, though, I find in general is just using AI. So go into your preferred AI app and just say, hey, I'm going to be traveling. This is the address that I'm going to be staying at. Can you please give me all the healthiest food options for a dinner meal in a vicinity of 10 miles from that location? And give me the website or the contact information or a link for their menu. And in that way, ahead of time, you're kind of laying down your options. Because you don't want to just fly by the seat of your pants and get to your location and be like, "Oh, I wonder what is available now." Like that's such a bad way to do it. And I would say a lot of people just operate that way. And so you will save yourself so much struggle by doing a little bit of due diligence at the front end, just even a little bit. Now, what I like to do is when I'm traveling, we'll often look for the hotel selection with the kitchen setup. So I'm going to be talking about that in pillar number 9. But pillar number 8 is the grocery store strategy. So grocery store strategies can be useful too. Like, for example, if you can find a Whole Foods market near you, Whole Foods will typically have a good self-service bar. So you can go in there and get a pretty good meal squared away from their pre-cooked service bar. So that's definitely a good lever you can pull. I'd be looking for pre-cooked proteins. So whether it's like some of the pre-cooked marinated tofu or some smoked salmon or some sort of pre-cooked chicken breast, get yourself some pre-cooked protein. Get yourself a condiment that you like the taste of, and throw in your rainbow concept if you can. Now, that to me is a great option, especially if it ties into the hotel selection with the kitchen that like I'm going to be talking about. But in general, what I think about is I'm looking for the nearby grocery stores in the area. I'll often try and get some more water from there too, so I want to stay on top of my hydration. Because if you don't, you're going to get constipated, you're going to get headaches, you're going to get more cravings. So I get some more water, and I'll get the macro bowl style principle stuff. I'm usually looking for protein sources, fruit like berries and citrus, so lemons, mandarins, blueberries, blackberries, raspberries. I'll be looking for my rainbow concept stuff and water, like I said. If you focus just on that, you're already winning. You're already winning. Now, the next part of that equation, pillar number 9, is the hotel selection. Now, what I personally try to look for is I try to look for hotels that have a kitchen setup. I realize that's not always going to be viable. It doesn't always happen. But I do think it's a great thing to look for, to try to make sure that you have the ability to like control some of the variables when it comes to your meals. Now, if you can't do that, that's where all the other strategies we've been talking about matter even more. But generally speaking, if I find hotels that have a nice little sort of mini kitchen setup with a little stove top and a commercial-sized fridge and just a normal little kitchen, that really makes this process so much easier. It makes it so much easier. At the very least, I absolutely want to make sure that the hotel has a fridge and a microwave. That it must have a fridge and a microwave. So sometimes I'll even, if it doesn't clearly say that, I will literally make sure that I request one and ask. I've done that before where some of the hotels wouldn't have a microwave. And so I would literally message ahead and make sure that that is left in my room. And they will do it. If you're polite about it, they will do that for you. But in general, I would rather spend a little bit more money on a decent hotel that has these amenities than to sort of bootstrap and just struggle with minimalist stuff. That's my mentality. I'd rather spend that little bit extra, have a setup that's exactly how I want it to make sure that I stay locked in. The ROI of that is massive, rather than not doing that and then sort of bootstrapping a bunch of hodgepodge tapestry of stuff together. Now, what I would say beyond the hotel selection is think about some of your go-to restaurant options. Now, in general, I would just say the things that I look for is Sweetgreen, Chipotle, other poke bowl locations, sushi bars, depending on your diet preferences, steakhouses, and Mexican grills. Those are generally the things that you can go to get a decent meal breakdown if you ask and customize. But especially things like Sweetgreen and Chipotle, you can get a pretty good approach locked in with those things where you don't have to worry about anything else. But I definitely think that you want to be trying to emulate as much as possible that macro bowl concept that I talk about in many of my episodes. I mean, episode number, I believe, 11 is where I talk all about the macro bowl concept and principles, which I would absolutely go and listen to, where I talk about, food is like software, your body and mind are the hardware. And so if you're eating a bunch of inflammatory fast food crap because you're traveling, that software is going to inflame your system and you're going to feel anxious and depressed and low energy. And what is the consequence of you feeling like that today? So you need to lead from that higher level place. Now, another thing that I love to do is pack your stack. Now, packing your stack means having a little set, a protocol of supplements and little bags of protein powder and some amino acids and some protein bars that kind of keep your routines locked in. What I usually try to do is I'll have protein powder, I'll have a little shaker, I'll have essential amino acids. I'll have electrolytes, like concentrated mineral drops, or if you need a non-liquid form, element packs can be useful. I'll have snacks like protein bars, like sort of a healthier trail mix option, like dried edamame. There's a few things like that. And then obviously things like blueberries, blackberries, raspberries are a good option too. But in terms of supplements, good quality multivitamin, omega-3s, creatine monohydrate, protein powder, essential amino acids, and usually something like theanine, serine, or some magnesium, because that can help with digestion. Now, I say all that because, and obviously I add in more than that. Usually I take a few more things. I'll take some NAC, I'll take some berberine, I'll take some glycine, because I want to cross my T's and dot my I's. I want to make sure that I really stay locked in. But as a base case, those previous ones that I suggested are a good place to begin. Because think about it, if you stop using your supplement support, you start losing the structure of your process. And the other thing is that just by traveling and being on planes or being exposed to lots of other people and the stress of just that stuff alone, your nervous system is usually going to need more immunological support. And so good quality multivitamins, like creatine monohydrate, helps with cognitive function, especially in the presence of sleep deprivation. So I use these things from a perspective of what's going to help keep me not getting sick and what's going to help keep my brain locked in where I perform at a higher level long term. That's the way I'm thinking about this stuff. I'm not just thinking about, what's going to help me get shredded and jacked. That's a byproduct of doing the other stuff well. So those supplements, protein powder, essential amino acids, mineral drops, creatine monohydrate, omega-3s, that's a good base system that you want to add into your equation. Now, to couple all that together, pillar number 12 is your hydration. I would typically tell you to focus on about half an ounce of spring water per pound of body weight. Now, what it might mean is that you need to front load and back load some of your hydration. If you're driving or flying, I would rather you drink more and have to use the rest stops a little bit more and stay on top of things where your cravings are under control and your digestion feels okay, than to dehydrate yourself and get super constipated and feel lethargic and getting a ton of cravings. That to me is not a good downstream effect. So what I would say in general is spring water, half an ounce per pound of body weight, front loading and back loading, much like the walking and the step count. Depending on when you get to your location, I will backload more of my hydration, but I won't do it if it's too late. So if, say, for example, I get to the next destination at, say, 2 p.m., I'll then backload a lot of the hydration into that 2 to 3 p.m. window to just catch up on everything. That's usually my preference. But if I know that I'm going to be getting in late, I will then front load more of it and just be okay with the fact that I have to stop a bit more. But I definitely think that for most people, I would say hydration is one of the first things that goes out the window, and it will have a really pronounced effect on your performance. Like I said, your digestion will feel off, you'll get cravings, and you might get migraines and headaches, your energy will feel low. All of these things will factor into how well you perform. So I definitely think the hydration is a foundation layer. Now, again, that's where I'll take our own water. If I'm packing our truck and we're driving, I'll take a few cases of water with me. You can obviously get it delivered to your hotel via Uber Eats if you want. You can go find the nearest grocery store. You can even just get the water from the hotel if they have a decent one. But either way, don't just think about food and supplements and snacks. You've got to think about your hydration targets as well. One of the other things that I think is really useful alongside all of this is some type of digestive support. Now, most people don't realize that when you're seated for long periods of time and you're not moving, you will get a lot more constipated, especially if you run dehydrated. So what I tell people is not only when you focus on hydration more, a nice base layer of digestive support is really useful. So it's as simple as a good quality digestive enzyme, peppermint tea, and that's really the main things. And some type of like glutamine powder, and that's really it. That's all I would really be focusing on. Sometimes lemon ginger tea can be good as well. So lemon ginger tea, peppermint tea, good quality digestive enzyme, and some glutamine powder. And what you'll find is that just having that little stack can really help soothe the digestion and get things moving and help break things down more. Because it will definitely have an effect if you're sitting for long periods of time, and especially if you're eating different foods than your normal routine, which is obviously almost always going to happen. That's another reason why I try to take my own stuff with me and use a hotel kitchen setup, because I want to keep the variables as consistent as possible. If I can make meals that somewhat are in alignment with what I normally eat, you will feel way, way better than if you're just bootstrapping stuff together and just eating random things. That's when you're going to start to run the risk of getting digestive issues. So that uniformity, I think, is really useful. And especially with the digestive little reset and supplements, it can help reduce bloating and help improve nutrient absorption. And I think those two things are really important when it comes to you just feeling good and performing well. So pillar number 14 is sleep optimization. This is just a simple one from the perspective of I would just make sure that you are getting up and going to bed at the same time, no matter what you're doing. So pack your day with any activities and things you need to be doing in the day, and then have that regular sleep-wake cycle. Get the room nice and dark, turn the air temperature down, don't have a bunch of food right before bed, be mindful about your caffeine consumption, and just do the best that you can with that. It's never going to be perfect. Obviously, it's going to be a different pillow, it's a different mattress, it might not be comfortable, but that's where obviously a little bit of the supplementation like the magnesium and or the theanine serene supplement that I use, and even some glycine, can be helpful with this. Now, what I would say is from a parental standpoint, if you're traveling with your family, obviously traveling by yourself is one thing. If you're traveling with your family, nervous system control and regulation is just so important. I even have episodes about nervous system and burnout and stuff like that. So I would be looking through those episodes for these types of things, because I would say that most people, when you're dealing with young kids and especially like infants and they're crying and screaming and just the logistics and the unfamiliar environment and everything that you're dealing with, that can really throw off your nervous system. And that's when you start getting digestive issues. It's when you'll start getting a ton of cravings and you want to binge eat. It's when you won't even have the mood or the desire to work out at all. And that's where the wheels start to fall off. So walking, breath work, and just maintaining that reframed perspective of thinking to yourself, this is just a temporary, this is a one-day thing, or this is a one-week thing, this is just temporary. Let me just get through this leg of the trip. When we're driving along and my son Xander is in the car seat screaming and I'm trying to get that last hour of the drive out, I'm just thinking to myself, you know what, Fraser? Very, very soon you're going to be home in your normal environment and this is going to be easy. This is going to feel easy. So stay the course, breathe, focus on your breathing, put on a YouTube episode of something that's educational or useful or interesting to you, put your headphones in, and you just focus on the road. So definitely maintaining that perspective and conscious, controlled nasal breathing and walking and movement is a really good way to manage that nervous system control, coupled with sleep around a regular sleep-wake cycle. Because if your nervous system gets all stressed out and you're getting all agitated with like your trip, your immune system will tank. And that's where you'll notice your digestion starts to tank and you'll get sick. And those are the last things that we want. Remember, pillar number 16, the 80-20 principle. You don't need perfection. You just need 80% consistency. Done is better than perfect. Keep the habits intact. Remember, move, hydrate, sleep, prioritize protein. It does not have to be perfect like that. If you are fretting about all the details, that's going to throw you off course to focusing on the prime levers that you can pull. Now, I just wanted to finish by saying, with Chris Daltrey, when he's traveling, we use the Max Pro Plus, we use the Happy Cow app, We'll use AI to pinpoint all the different places. He'd even have food catering at some of these stadiums and places he was playing at, and we would actually communicate with the food catering ahead of time and ask if they could prepare certain things. So there's real power in you being proactive about your situation. And then obviously, if you are traveling domestically, you can, and you have the ability, take a meal prep service with you or get meal preps sent to a location. Like, there's different things you can do if you're proactive. Now, there's even little like pots of like meals, like meals to go that all they require is like either boiling water or microwave. And so there's things like that we have in our inventory at our house. I have a bunch of those things that I use for Lauren, my wife, for example. And that's a really just simple tactic to keep habits intact, the 80-20 principle. But like I said, this last week, we're driving down, 2-day trip down to Louisiana. My wife's grandmother passed away, so there was a lot of emotion. There's a lot of stress. And I focused on the front loading, the back loading of the steps. We took the whole family for walks as well. You know, we would all go. I focused on stopping more if needed to stay more hydrated. We took extra water with us. I packed a cooler bin together with the macro bowl stuff and the healthy food options. We had our supplement stack locked in place. I would rather take a little bit of extra stuff with me and remove all the headaches and variables. I promise you, the highest performers, that's what they do. The guys and gals that have the garbage results, they're the ones that just completely bootstrap and wing it. Now, if you're very, very experienced and advanced, you can still wing it. Like, I could do that, and I would still be able to stay on top of things. But most people just don't have the skill sets to even do that. So a little bit of that front-loaded due diligence goes a long, long way. And then obviously with the musician Chris Daltrey, you know, there's long days, tour bus, minimal access to gyms at times. Sometimes when he's overseas, he doesn't even have his normal like meal options. And he might be in a country where English isn't even the primary language. So in that instance, we'll get him to take a screenshot of the menu, and we'll say, translate this into English for us. And what we'll often do is we'll get it translated, and then we'll say, not only translate it into English for us, but pre-select all the options that are high in protein and have a rainbow concept attached to them. And it will pre-select and kind of give you a breakdown. There's a real power to leveraging AI with stuff like this. And then obviously making sure that you've got your powerlifting loop tension bands with you, your supplement stack. Because I'm telling you, you cannot just wait for the perfect window. You cannot be the person that's going on these trips and like, oh, when I get back home, then I'll start. Then I'll get serious. That's not the way the high-level guys and gals think about this. They think to themselves, I'm not someone who's trying to stay on track. I'm a business athlete who travels. And I have a set of non-negotiables that I implement imperfectly. Done is better than perfect. There was many times this past week where it wasn't ideal, but I still kept it locked in. And so the beautiful part about that is you don't get sick. And the other part of it is you get back home and you hit the ground running because you have momentum. But also think to yourself, when you're traveling, what are you traveling for? Are you traveling because you're doing a presentation? Are you traveling because you're speaking? Are you traveling because you're going to a mastermind event? You obviously want to be on your game for those things. You don't want to show up to that all foggy and bloated. That's not a good impression. So you even have a more vested interest in keeping your principles locked in, because that walking billboard effect, the way you show up, that's going to have a real world effect on everything. On you as a brand, on your ability to lead people, on your ability to sell people, everything. So travel protocols. It's absolutely possible. And the more you do that little bit of due diligence at the front end, the more it's going to serve you tremendously long term with keeping yourself locked in, keeping yourself intact. Because remember this, when you're out on the road, when you're exploring the world and you're doing all these things, you want to be battle ready. You want to show up to that meeting, you want to show up to that event on your game. And that's not going to happen if you just show up and wing it with no plan and no due diligence. The guys and gals that show up sharpshooting with a little bit of that laid down framework, they are the ones that dominate. They are the ones that show up with that high vital energy, mental clarity that's just a magnet for people. People are drawn to that. So go out there today and remember, there's never going to be the perfect time for this stuff. And these travel protocols, that's going to be the stuff that raises your baseline. Because remember, be that high tide that rises all ships.